and you ask me to help you, all I see is a bunch of coding, and I don't know what you're thinking. But Miss Boyer, my table's not working. Okay, well, what's wrong? Well, it's not working. I don't know. Well, what's wrong with it, Sam? What do you want it to look like? Well, I don't know, because it's not working. Do you see where I'm going with this? So whenever we do tables and whenever we do web layout, we draw it out like a storyboard. We staple it before we leave, we turn it in. When we come back in, we grab it out. We never take it home with us because we don't work with this stuff on home, unless we're homebound. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start building a table. And we're going to talk about the table. I'm going to give you a real simple table. I would draw every time I write. Yes. This is a table. Would we agree?
Yes.
How many columns does this table have?
4.
Oh, I heard 2 and 4. Let's look at the screen again. How many columns?
2.
Columns. Okay, so we agree that we have 2 columns because these are columns that go down. You know how I remember columns? I think of the Greeks or the Romans, and they built lovely infrastructures and architecture, and they had wonderful, beautiful columns. Columns go vertical. I'm a very visual learner, so I think columns go vertical. I think of Roman columns. In fact, when I went to Rome last year, I'm like, ooh, let me take a picture of this column. You know, and that's how I remember. That's why I think of you guys when I'm on vacation. This year I'll be in Australia. You know what I'll be doing in Australia? I'll be in a boat. And before I get to where I'm going diving, I'm going to be in a boat. And let me tell you how I know a row. Rows, Sam, go horizontal. And I think of an oar. Row, row, row your boat. Yes, it may sound silly, but you would believe that in Multimedia 1, at this point, you should know the difference between a column and a row. If you had me for computer apps, you've heard this story. But I have had several students that come to me in Multimedia 1 and say, I want my table fixed. Okay, well, how many columns do you want? Well, I have 2. No, honey, you have 3. Because columns are, I have kids that don't know the difference between rows and columns. Okay? You may be one of those kiddos now, but now I've given you a visual, I've given you a lesson, and you should know the difference. Now, in multimedia HTML land, when we look at our table, that is a 2 by 2, would you agree? It's 2 columns, it's 2 rows. Okay? In HTML, it knows data and it knows rows. It doesn't know columns. Columns are created with the data. The data that we're going to see is this individual section right here. How many individual sections do we have? 4. And if we were in Microsoft Word, Publisher, PowerPoint, or any other program that dealt with tables, what would these individual sections be called? Anybody know? You should know. What? I've heard it over here. Cells. These are cells. Well, we're not in biology, so HTML says, hey, I don't know the word cell, but I'm going to call that table data. So these individual cells, the code for that is table data. They're called data cells, but HTML abbreviates it as TD. TD, and notice I'm putting my short brackets around it. The cell is really the table data, and the table data is brought to you by TD. Okay? So in order to go from this TD, and HTML reads left to right, not up to down. We read it just like a book. We're not Arabic, so we're not reading right to left. We're reading left to right. So it reads, this is row 1. Would you agree that this is row 1? And this is row 2? Okay, so it's going to say, okay, row 1, table data. You would put your data in it. Then you would end that table data. Begin a new table data. In that table data. Okay, if you want to get to row 2, are you done with row 1? You would end your table row. So let me show you. Let's create this table. So you have your sheet of paper in front of you. You tell me that you want to create a 2 by 2 table. And in this table, you want to put FBLA here and FBLA here. Number 1 here. Number 1 here. That's what you want your table to look like. Okay? And you're going to draw it out like that for me before you actually design it in code. You have to see, and I have to be able to help you, so I got to see what you're seeing, right? So, in order to start a table in HTML, we gotta tell HTML we want a table. So the code to start a table or to open a table is strictly table with our brackets. Now, how many rows? Well, again, we're going left to right, rows come first. Okay, rows get listed first, then our TDs for our data. So, how many rows do we have? Two. Are we going to start with row 2 first, or are we going to start with row 1 first? We're going to start with row 1. So we're going to tell the computer TR for table row. And what's in row number 1? How many data cells? 2, right? We have data cell number 1, so this is a TD, and this is a TD, correct? So in row 1, we're going to have 2 data cells. 1 TD. What's in this side, this TD? What's it say? Good. So next to our TD for our data, we're going to write FBLA. We're going to end that table data. That way we can start a new table data. Okay? So we're ready to start our second table data. We'll do that. Again, you can't start a new one until you end the previous one. And it said number 1 on that, correct? I can scroll up. We're at this point right here. So I got FBLA in that table data, start new table data, number 1 in that table data. Am I done with my row? Yes? End your row, table row. Do I need to end my table?
Not yet? No.
Not yet, because we have another row, don't we? Okay, well let's continue on with the second row. Okay, ready for my second row? So I'm going to do table row. Because I ended my first row, I begin my second row. And how many data cells did row number 2 have? 2. So I'm going to have a table data. And the first table data is going to say number 1 first. So I'll do the number 1. And I'll end that table data. Then I'll have new table data. That's going to say FBLA. I'm going to end that table data. I'm going to end my table row. And I'm going to end my table. Now, if you were to type all of this in HTML for your FBLA site, from the beginning of the table and all the way down to the end of the table, you're going to create a table with an invisible border. If you don't believe me, I would like for you to try it now. And if you do believe me, try it now. So type your table information. I'll keep this up here as high as I can scroll up. Is the table. Just remember to end your table at the end. Okay, so if you would, at this time, insert your table border. Again, either putting a tab in or including border at the end equals 1. And if you would save it, and Andrew, will you connect back to the smartboard, please? And let me see your table.